Few fighters ever made Leonard work that hard, and for a 21-year-old, the performance was remarkable. 2 years later, on May 23, 1981, Benitez reached another career high. He faced Maurice Hope for the WBC light middleweight championship, seeking to become the youngest three-division champion in boxing history. The fight ended in dramatic fashion. In the 12th round, Benitez unleashed a devastating right hand that sent Hope crashing to the canvas, out cold. But the true test came the following year. On January 30, 1982, he faced Roberto Duran, the infamous Hands of Stone, known for breaking down opponents with relentless pressure and power. The unanimous decision victory was one of the highlights of his career. Against one of the most feared fighters of his era, Benitez had proven himself not just a prodigy, irreversible. By then, his health was deteriorating fast. Neurologists confirmed what many had already suspected. Years of punishment had triggered early neurological damage. He was urged to retire immediately. Even his mother, Clara, noticed the changes: slower reactions, dulled reflexes, the gifts that once defined him slipping away. But Benitez kept fighting. Why? Because boxing wasn't just what he did. It was who he was. He had been a fighter since childhood, and walking away felt impossible. Promoters, too, were willing to look the other way, giving him fights even after failed medical tests. The system didn't protect him. It exploited him. By 1989, the consequences were undeniable. He was formally diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, the irreversible brain disease caused by repeated head trauma. Despite this, he fought until the knockout was hailed as one of the best of the year. At just 22 years old, Benitez had achieved what many considered impossible. He was now a three-weight world champion, solidifying his place among the elite. Many expected Duran to overwhelm Benitez, but that night, the young Puerto Rican delivered a masterclass. For 15 rounds, he controlled the pace, outboxed Duran, and picked him apart with clinical precision. 1990, retiring at just 32 years old, broken in body and spirit. The years since have been painful to witness. Once celebrated as Puerto Rico's prodigy, today Wilfred Benitez cannot walk, cannot speak, cannot care for himself. Every daily function, eating, bathing, dressing, depends on his sister, Yvonne, who has been his sole caregiver since their mother's passing in 2008. She stretches his limbs to prevent muscle atrophy, manages his medications, and tends to him around the clock, with no pension, no reliable support, and only a token $200 monthly stipend from the boxing authorities that once celebrated him. The tragedy of Wilfred Benitez isn't just personal, it's systemic. Boxing took his talent, his health, his earnings, and left him abandoned. For all the millions he generated, for all the arenas he filled, the sport gave him nothing when he needed it but a master craftsman. Later that same year, though, the tide began to turn. On December 3, 1982, he met Thomas Hearns in New Orleans in a fight billed as the Carnival of Champions. Hearns, with his freakish reach and knockout power, posed an almost impossible challenge. Benitez relied on every ounce of his defensive genius to stay competitive. But after 15 grueling rounds, Hearns walked away with a majority decision. It was a hard-fought contest, but it marked the beginning of the decline. So, what do you think? Should legends be discarded once their bodies fail? Or does the sport owe them more than applause and memories? Wilfred Benitez's story forces us to ask what changes boxing needs: mandatory pensions, health care, protections for fighters who give everything they have and end up with nothing. If his story moved you, don't just scroll past. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video so more people can hear his story. 80% of the proceeds from this video will be donated to Wilfred. By then, the warning signs were becoming harder to ignore. Behind the scenes, his training discipline was slipping. Injuries mounted. Promoters pulled him into fights without proper preparation. And still, he kept going. On paper, his record looked strong, but the reality was clear. Each battle with legends like Leonard, Duran, and Hearns had left a mark. The punishment was catching up, and his body was starting to betray him. Then came the turning point outside the ring, most. His sister shoulders the impossible burden alone, fueled only by love and duty, even as exhaustion takes its toll. When Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico in 2017, Benitez and his sister were left even more vulnerable, eventually relocating to Chicago thanks to the kindness of fellow Puerto Ricans and former fighters. Today, Benitez lives in near isolation, a shadow of the boy genius who once slipped punches like radar. The contrast is heartbreaking. The man who beat champions, who inspired a nation, is now forgotten by the very system he carried. He is living proof of how brutal boxing can be, not just in the ring, but in the aftermath. In 1986, after a fight with Carlos Herrera, Benitez was supposed to collect a $25,000 purse. It wasn't the millions he had once made, but it was supposed to pay the bills and support his family. Instead, he was blindsided. The promoter, who held his passport, paperwork, and paycheck, vanished, taking everything with him. Stranded in Argentina with no money, no ID, and no way home, Benitez found himself abandoned by the very system that had once celebrated him. For over a year, he wandered the streets, homeless, humiliated, and forgotten. Eventually, government intervention helped him return to Puerto Rico, but the damage was Wilfred and his sister Yvonne to support his ongoing care. Every view, every share, every donation makes a difference. Links to contribute directly through Yvonne's PayPal and Venmo are in the description below. Together, we can make sure that the prodigy who gave the world so much doesn't fade away forgotten. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.